Yep, we got it made. We think we're big shots. We're in the modern age. We got our big screen TVs, an exercise bicycle to keep us in shape. We got doctors that can fix almost anything. We can go across the country with aircraft in less than a half a day. So there's nothing that somebody in the Stone Age could ever teach us today. Those Stone Age cultures, well, they're nothing. They have nothing that we could use, ever. Even the Native Americans, just as Stone Age people, don't have to listen to them, do we? Or do we? This is McCook's Mr. Bill. My people came to southwest Nebraska and northwestern Kansas in the 1880s. Homesteaded they did. And I'm here to tell you that the Native Americans, what few were still left, told them, whatever you do, stay off the river bottom. Don't put your homes next to the river. Now, you could look at the Republican River on certain times of the year, like right now in November, and there isn't 6 inches of water and maybe 2 foot across of water coming down. That's the river, the mighty Republican River. Don't have to worry about that, don't have to fear it, do we? Nah, nothing could go wrong by building a house right next to it, right? Unfortunately, a lot of homesteaders that came out here to southwest Nebraska, they ignored those savages, those primitive tribes, those Stone Age people. And they built their homes close to the creeks and the rivers, just right next to them, maybe 50 feet away from them. They said, we're safe. Look, we're a good 10 feet off the creek bottom, 10 feet above it. We're safe. Nothing could go wrong. 50 feet away, that way we can walk down, drop down into the creek and the river and get a pail of water, because they didn't have no wells back then. They said, this is good enough. We're safe. And once in a while, a flood would come up just to the edge, just to the flood plain, and very seldom beyond that whatsoever, though. So 90% of the time, you'd be safe to have a home here, right next to the Republican River or any of a dozen creeks that run into it, except for that one time. We are right now 250 yards away from the Republican River, and the ground itself is 20 feet above the riverbed, 20 feet above it. And so you'd think you'd be safe here, at least this far back, but most of the homes that the homesteaders built were right next to the river so that they could get water easily. But to give you an example, you see that sign up there? Well, that sign is how high the water got in the flood of 1935. It killed 100 people. It killed 100 people. My mother-in-law told, as a little girl living next to the Republican River in 35 when it flooded, she was 5 years old, and she told that river raging, and she standing there beside her father watching the water boil and roll by, and she said, she kept saying, geese, geese. And her father finally looked to her and said, my dear, that's not geese, that's snakes. It washed out thousands of snakes out of the canyons, and they were bobbing up and down in that flooding river. She said, clear into her when she was in her 80s, she still said, I have nightmares of those snakes. Water is a tool, a dangerous tool, something to be respected. And so we passed laws here in southwest Nebraska after the flood of 35 that you couldn't put a home next to the river. They called it a floodplain. We weren't going to lose another 100 people and all the damages it caused. We moved the railroad off the bottom too. I'm here to tell you that the bottom line is that we got educated. It's too bad that we didn't listen to the Native Americans from day one. But those people had just got hammered by Sandy on the East Coast. Billions of dollars in damages, and a bucket of people dead, and a lot more that will be homeless and without power. Maybe they should have listened to the Stone Age people. And since they didn't this time, I hope maybe the government will say maybe it's time we don't build next to water anymore. We got to use some common sense of where the people belong. And never on any kind of floodplain or next to an ocean that can boil up and go and send a lot of people to heaven or hell. The Stone Age people were smarter than we were in a number of ways, and this was one of them.